13, 2026. And we'll be here for about 33 minutes or so. And then I have to go stalk, which is, I'm calling it my, I don't know. It's kind of an escape from my routine. And it's very calming for some reason. It's the way that everyone's in their own aisle. It's overnight, no customers. I don't have to, put on a friendly face or anything. I just do the work. But it reminds me of like being in a monastery, a bunch of monks, because nobody talks. It's like almost surreal. It's peaceful, calm. There's no drama. No one gets within anyone's space long enough to even start any kind of conversation deeper than asking some mundane question. And I like it like that. I like the distance. I like the fact that it feels like a drama-free environment where I have like 90 minutes per shift just to read or write, which is what I do in my breaks. I was like, this is almost like a monastery, called a wall monastery. Because, you go, you see these guys, you see them in gardens, the monks, and it's like, are you really thinking about the dirt and the seed? And like when you're gardening, are you really thinking about that deeply, or does your mind wander? Because the work I'm doing doesn't require any thinking. It's almost like playing Tetris. And I find that it's just like my mind's wandering the whole time and I'm not talking, I'm in my own head. And I get out of my shift and I'm like, that's actually really calming. I've usually had jobs where, I can't wait to get home, or the whole time you're putting on a front. Or the last one I did before this, I was driving 9 to 12 hours at a stretch, and I had a trucker shoulder as a result. I had like this repetitive motion injury from holding my arms up tense, driving at the speeds that I needed to get to the destinations on time and still turn a profit. And it was like grueling, but it limited my range of motion. And I had pain in my arm that would wake me up at night for like a year straight. But anyway, this job is nothing like that one. All right, let's see who's here. Green Smoke. Let's go. Dr. Bass Ackwards. The Nate. Frank Murr 33. King Ravana. Adam Man. I like your new whiteboard vids. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm trying to do a nightly whiteboard. And the reason why is I'm preparing to promote the book in small bookstores, venues, whatever I can find, anywhere. And that's one of the reasons why I took this second job and why I'm getting back into the junk hauling, is I need to have a budget to support my plan. And I think the only way to present these concepts, because I'm describing the compartmentalization of the public mind, the invisible prison, the internalized Truman Show, it will require infographics. And I have this world stage model design I've been throwing around there, which is basically the circle, the closed system of information, the horseshoe over it representing the horseshoe theory, the fringes, and how they nearly mirror each other perfectly at the edge, but they don't quite touch. And then over that, I put the triangle to represent the triangulation that the media creates between the left and the right, with the favoritism towards the left and the right being from the media's perspective, the mass media, the state media, whatever you want to call it. They create this dialectic, but you have to see it on paper, and it becomes very clear. Because the sad part is people do walk lockstep with a bunch of NPCs, even if they have a lot of internal diversity of opinion, because the compartments are that well done. There's a perfect schism. But it's not going to happen. Like, I mean, no one's going to understand this unless they start understanding the concept that news bending is real. The idea of proactively writing the news or proactively writing history is real. It's evident in a number of ways, not just the predictive programming, but also the drills. But we're talking about news bending like the play from 1968, but the long-term effects, history bending, and being able to see, okay, well, look what this particular path did. Look what this divergence did. Johnny Nevermind says, I heard a report that the Ford aircraft carrier was sunk. 5,000 dead. Is this true? Probably not. I would say if it's an extraordinary claim, you would have some evidence. Maybe do a web search instead of just asking the question. And I'm all for asking questions. But if you're asking a question that you could answer, and then you could bring us some interesting tidbits, I think we'd appreciate it more, because just asking questions is almost like asking for favors. Like, will you go to the fridge and get me a Pepsi? It's like, you're raising a valid question. Why don't you bring the facts? I mean, I understand. I'm just saying, is it true? You can't say it's true at face value. There's not enough information from a headline. Even if I were to look and I see this sunken Ford carrier and looks like bodies in the ocean, I would still say I need to wait a minute. I need to wait a couple, maybe even 72 hours, because if you react to headlines, you become a default low information believer. Like the people who said that Jim Carrey was replaced, no matter what their perception of it was at the time, there wasn't really enough information available to the average viewer to make that determination. I think we need more viewpoints. We need to wait for more time to elapse and to really suss out the theories that are thrown out there just flippantly. Because some theories they throw out there presuppose other things to be true, which aren't true. Like, you cannot clone a perfect clone or a perfect copy of a 64-year-old man. Cloning is not fake, but like the idea that it would require that they had a lot of them, like, on hand. Like, someone has a mansion full of Jim Carreys in case one of them gets out of line. Like, do you see how insane that sounds? Okay, what were we? Oh yeah, that's right. We were talking about this person. So I'm watching this thread. I'm following the thread closely. So these people are noticing that Donald Trump wasn't really shot at, and they're finally brave enough to talk about it. Like, as the days go by, I start thinking more about that event, how it might be fake. What do you mean days? It's been years. We called it out before it happened. We knew it was coming because we have this metascript perspective. We knew we were expecting it, and we were 100% validated. We were more on target with Butler than we were with COVID, just based on how spot on. Even saying the right side of the head, for example. But to call that fake and still think Charlie Kirk is real, I'm like, what is that? Oh, thanks for the link. Appreciate it. Yeah. So if you're going to say, oh, no, Charlie Kirk is dead, but Donald Trump, that was fake. I'm sorry, but it's the same PSYOP entertainment complex. There are overlapping agencies and individuals involved with both. And it's not guilt by association at this point. It's pattern recognition. I can point out a number of PSYOP operatives, and they're people who have a certain security clearance. This is their role in life, their job, their profession. And if they've been a part of one PSYOP, then you should always look at them from that perspective. These people have some access. They're behind the scenes. They're engaged in the PSYWAR, in this nonstop bread and circuses where the fake events serve a very specific purpose. One, it puts us into a hyper reality, a shared worldview. And again, the worldview doesn't match the world, the map's not the territory. So we live in this shared worldview. And it's global on scale. That's the other part of it. But these fake events also they always have a perfect down the middle bifurcation. It's meant to be interpreted one way to the left, one to the right. They both agree it happened. They just disagree on who caused it, and they blame each other. That's the triangulation at work. And the triangulation is there to make sure there is no unity, because what keeps this thing working is the tug of war, the back and forth. It's never going to stop, if you ask me. This is doing what it's designed to do, the mind war, the sublimated civil war, the perpetual war of 1984. What's up, PSYOP Sidecar? Thanks for joining. So this person responds to me saying that if you're going to say this is fake, you must say that is fake. And he said, you weren't there. And so what does that reveal? Because I've heard people do this. I've heard people say, well, I wasn't there. I can't say. I don't think anybody died at that event, but I wasn't there. You're saying that you don't have the ability to arrive at a conclusion that isn't presented to you by the screen. And then two, the implication is I am only going to trust eyewitnesses if I can't be a witness. Well, an eyewitness is still hearsay. So you're essentially saying that hearsay is valid. And then another point too, and this one's more significant in when we look at fake events. Someone will say you weren't there, you can't call it fake. Well, if you watch professional wrestling or you watch a magic show on TV, do you have any business calling these things fake? Like, you know what? The way that wrestler body slammed that guy, it looked a little choreographed. But I wasn't there. I was at home, so I can't say I think it was real. Or you're watching a magic show and some magician levitates, and you're like, yeah, I'm not there, so I guess it's real. You see what I'm saying? That is uncritical thinking, and it's an appeal to authority. You weren't there is an appeal to the authority of media, what they put their stamp of approval on. And I don't think it's valid because I think you can arrive at knowing, and I don't think belief is good enough. So that person believes the official story. Okay, well, you believe it on low information. So you're a low info believer. Whereas what are we? We're not low information disbelievers. We don't just say it's fake and ignore it. We study every detail of it, all the peripheral information in the entire context, including the entrained entertainment, the concurrent predictive programming stuff. We look at everything. And by the way, I've been using this term concerted messaging, and I came across something very interesting that ties into this idea of creating an echo chamber with the memes that reinforce a psyop. I'll get to it in a minute. And it has to do with this thing called reflexivity that George Soros was talking about. I saw it in a tweet by James Lindsay. But to get to my point here, low information takes, whether you're calling something fake or real without doing due diligence, are not as valid as an informed disbeliever. And it's a valid position to be a disbeliever if your disbelief is rooted in reason. There's like 50 reasons why I don't believe this event is real. What are your reasons for trusting it? I saw it on TV. Well, if they don't confront your reasons for saying it might not be real, then they're essentially coming at you with an argument from ignorance, and they can just be ignored. It's almost like fundamentalist religious types. They don't want to hear anything outside of their frame. But anyway, it was a total cop out, and I've seen people using that, and it's like, okay, so you're admitting that you are lacking the independent thinking to arrive at an accurate conclusion. Because we're not just talking about one event in isolation. We're looking at a context in which we're inclusive of 6+ decades of media fakery in mass media that becomes entrenched in our history. We're talking about decades of precedent, a pathologically aligned media. It's not like, oh, it might be honest tomorrow, but it lies on occasion. But I don't know, I wasn't there. You see what I mean? I think there's a war on discernment. Your intuition often is right, because when you are looking at something, an event, a person giving an account of something, you're taking in more information than just the words. You get the micro expressions, the tonalities, and you might intuit that the person is lying, but you can't consciously come to a reasoned analysis. This is why I think they're lying, but it's like a feeling. And that feeling can be a lead to further investigation. I trust my intuition. If you don't trust your intuition, which is a perception, then you're being gaslit, especially if you hand over the authority to whoever's telling you not to trust it. What's up, Mazel? Dr. Beck Asswords, he says, it's always so convenient how these events are videotaped and presented to us. Yeah, that last ISIS bomber guy who looked like the Boston bomber, that looked like a fashion shoot. Great angles, even the cop jumping over the fence. It's like an action movie. Okay, now another point here that I was raising with regard to this individual's take on things is that you're wrong if you think the media is objective. You think there's just cameras that float over there or carried by people and they just, let's go ahead and broadcast to everybody so they have more information just because we want them to be informed. No, they're going over there when the media is lying, when it's perpetrating a psychological operation, when they're doing an op. In that capacity, the people involved, the agencies involved, they're not just recording organic events. No, they're actually the production team. So they can go from recording passively and producing actively, like liars. Liars, good liars don't lie with every breath. Those are bad liars because it's obvious. The good ones only lie for strategic advantage when they have the trust of the person they will be lying to. And the media has everyone's trust. And this presumption of objectivity is naive, especially now with generative AI reaching the state that it's at and where it's going. We aren't seeing, like, when we talk about these psychological operations like Trump or Kirk with his squib, we're not seeing through it. Like, I saw it on TV and it looked so fake, because that's not a way to approach it anymore. That's not an effective methodology, and it's going to get worse. It's going to be less relevant because you won't be able to rely on your eyes alone. So no, we're not seeing through it. We're thinking through it. Our analysis is more inclusive of just what's on the screen. It's the story, the context, all the peripheral stuff, the special effects, the fakeability considerations, concurrent predictive programming, its interconnectedness with other events, immediately implementable political agendas, drills, anything to suggest that the thing was templated, planned in advance, connected to other events. These are all indicators that maybe it's not organic. Another one is discrepancies or divergences from standard protocol. Like, generally speaking, if somebody's the target of an assassination and they get shot and they're bleeding, you don't prop them up so they can act like Hulk Hogan or something, like raising the fist all triumphant for the cameras. That's not how it works. It was a WWE theatrical moment. Nate Watley says, was the news reporter that told them what to believe there when the event happened? No, why would you believe them? Oh, that's a great double standard. You're right. The media wasn't there. They came after the fact. And here's how they trap everyone. Because you have big channels like I've been mentioning, Jesse on Fire, who's like, I think Charlie Kirk's really alive. Okay, well, or these newer channels that are coming up and saying, I think that Butler was fake. Their opinions don't go anywhere, or they get confused. Their output is flawed. Like anything you ask ChatGPT, you're going to get a mainstream perspective because that's its built-in frame of reference and it's guardrailed. Well, these individuals I speak of are guardrailed. Whatever they say about the event, it's framed within the world stage paradigm. It has all its built-in presuppositions. They don't know both sides are completely controlled, or how global the control is, or how systemic and common the fakery is, or that the Charlie Kirk event was scheduled to happen before he even got hired to be that person from the time he turned 18 to 31, before they hired the actress Candace, and Erica, the actresses, for their parts in this story. So they're manufacturing history. These things are many years in the planning. I mentioned the other night that people are easily duped and fooled. They have no discernment. And Charlie Kirk was not a Christian. Charlie Kirk could not have been a Christian if his whole intent here was to be an operative working for the government, to run a psyop, to bleed out on TV and shock the minds of the people, bring out the worst in some, horrify others, trigger emotions. I mean, how many people showed up at that memorial? Assuming it wasn't CGI or enhanced, people are being played because the bread and circuses is so entertaining, and they take it for granted that they're being shown a reality to react to. But again, media is not there to inform you, it's there to conform you. Big difference. They're conforming you to a prefabricated model, a prefabricated series of events. They've already written 2026. That thing in Iran, that everybody forgot about when they noticed Jim Carrey with his facelift. The thing in Iran was already planned to happen. Renee Good, that ICE killing, yeah, that was scheduled in advance. In fact, that was predicted more or less. That was a continuation or reinforced by Wicked Part 2 for Good. There's an overlapping theme there. And these themes transcend individual movies. The green representing Antifa, the left, the Wizard of Oz being Trump. And I'll point these things out just based on the archetypes and the subtext. And then I'll just search reviews to see if anybody else is saying the same thing. And, generally I find it's a consensus among critics. Like, I'm not just reaching here. Not that I'm appealing to the authority of critics, but I'm saying I'm not connecting dots that aren't there. I'm actually looking at things very closely, and we are engaging in pattern recognition, which is how you break out of the cycles. I think the problem is news consumers, mainstream and alt, are caught in the news cycle, like the synths in Westworld, reliving the same day again and again. And it always ends the same way. And they start over again, like blank slate. Like, maybe it's going to be truthful today. Or maybe it's going to be a real event today. Like, we have these people caught in this cycle where they're not looking at the continuity of fakery going far back enough. And if you don't include all that, your perception is going to be skewed. The media shouldn't be setting your agenda. It shouldn't be plugged into you to the point where you react to every headline as though it's relevant. How much bandwidth do you have to spare? I no longer give any of my attention away the way I used to. And I certainly have unplugged more recently. And I don't mean like I'm not paying attention. I'm paying very close attention, but I'm not reacting to the things with the wave. I'm watching, because what they're doing is they're accounting for what we're doing. You will see a mass shooting, and then they'll put a fake lead as to who did it. They'll wait for all the alternative media types, independents, to react, and then they'll pull a switcheroo and make everyone look crazy. Strange game. The only winning move is not to play. I've been describing our manufactured history and the events that we get entangled with as alternate reality games. Like right now, one of the big ARGs is this involvement with Candace Owens, where, and this is now, I think this is the design. The alternative media thinks it's like a consensus, like it's the people versus the establishment. So they feel like they're doing something, like they're engaged. I noticed too that the conspiracy theorists engage online, whereas the left engages in the streets. So they do the Renee Good thing, and you get the left marching. The right gets all the evidence they need that Epstein did all these bad things, and you don't see them marching. Guilam says, are there any cast iron real life giveaways that can be used to prove someone in a particular tragic event didn't really happen? Court cases, coroner, police. Well, it's not on us to prove a negative. I would say this. Prove one did happen, because the burden of proof is not on you. It shouldn't be hard. It should not be difficult to find evidence of a real death. And you're welcome to go check the morgues. See what you turn up. Didn't they block the ability to look at autopsy reports in Connecticut before that event? But anyway, the burden of proof is on the claim maker in this case, with extraordinary claims, but in general, just because the characteristic mendacity of media, they ought to provide the burden of proof. It's their damn job. And I'm not a reality denialist. I was interviewed by Mick Media, and they had some psychoanalyst look at me and say, he just doesn't want to believe these terrible things are happening. And it's like, what are you talking about? I'm no stranger to these things. I have no problem. I've worked around the coroner's office in the funeral industry, and dead bodies aren't a thing that really I have a problem accepting. I'm fine with death. So that wasn't it. I'm saying that the burden of proof was never on me. And look, if they had pictures of any of these things, yeah, like amputee crisis actors faking like their leg got blown off, that's hilarious. That's creative. It's actually ingenious. You take what seems to be a disadvantage and you turn it into something. That guy weaponized that stump. He turned it into like a role of a lifetime, starring role in one of the major psyops of our lives. But the burden of proof is never met. If they actually had pictures that were gory and sick, they would distribute them to shock the heck out of us. But they don't, because they don't have it. It's not on me to prove the media right. So when somebody's like, believe the media, bro, you weren't there. I don't know what to say to those types. I'm like, you realize that the burden of proof is not on you. They've converted you into a believer, like in religion. Like, we can't show you God, but if you're a good person, you'll just believe. And if you don't, you're a bad person. And that's what I mean when I say these people are pretty much religious. It's like religiosity. Like, oh, you're a non-believer. You're a bad person. And I've described this before. I said what we're doing is akin to atheism with our perspective on media as being the state church. And it does serve that function. And we do confront its God constructs in the way that an atheist could criticize a theocracy. And I think that we're looking at is fundamentally a mix of science and science fiction. And I call it nastology, but because it's such a universally held worldview and it's infused with such fakery and contemporary myths, and it has a replacement for all the different aspects of the traditional religions, it's accurate to call it a religion. It's a one world religion. So the conspiracy theorists like Jones and others would say it's going to be a one world religion, one world government. It's coming, run for your lives. And it's like, relax. It's already here. You've already been conquered. It's too late. Too little, too late. It's incontestable. You were born into bondage, as Morpheus told Neo. That's why I like using the Gnostic allegory when it comes to media mind control or the internalized Truman Show, and then point out how this has been going on for a long time. They didn't just start faking things with 9/11. And even with that, the common interpretation was to call it a false flag. That's an erroneous take. If you call it a false flag, you're agreeing that it happened. You're just disagreeing on the culprits. You see what I mean? Both sides agree it happened. They just disagree on the culprit. Classic. That's the Hegelian dialectic thing. That's the black and the white. This side believes A, this side believes B, but they both agree on C. And it's a template, and it's triangulation. That's what keeps it moving. When we first started this think tank, there was a tactic used where you had a bunch of trolls on YouTube who would say, how dare you call it fake? You haven't given the family time to grieve. Like I had this person in my chat who would say, I just want to take a moment here and send my thoughts and prayers and my heart and my vibes out to the survivors of that last tragic event in Vegas. I'm like, you're loosh cowing for crisis actors. That's pathetic. It was a schism, actually. And it wasn't a schism, it was a purge. It's like if you got theatrical blood on your hands and you're crisis acting on the internet, GTFO. All right, let's see what else we have here. Okay, now, so getting back to that conversation with that individual, the bottom line is this: to say I wasn't there, I don't know, is a cop out. You're basically saying that you can't think for yourself and that you outsource to authoritative sources. That's an appeal to an authority. It's a religious take. It's not a critical take. It's uncritical, and you're mad at the critical thinkers. It's not a good sign. And they falsely think they have the moral high ground and that they have the truth on their side. So they look down on those of us who call things out accurately. Like, who are you? You weren't there. That's media advocacy. And again, we're not just talking about this one event. If you've studied media and you've looked at these various like events over time, you can see all the fake events exist on the same timeline, which is superimposed over the real one. That's what I call the metascript. All the fake events are connected. Not an exaggeration. The same entities are behind staging martyrs for the left and the right, whether it's Renee Good, Floyd, Charlie Kirk, or if it's these bigger events. I'm just, at this point, insisting that we don't accept that cop out. I don't know, I wasn't there, because the implication is you weren't there, so you can't know. And they're trying to basically undermine your ability to make a claim. And it's like informed belief is valid compared to low info disbelief, or this low information take of I can't be sure. It's like, I don't know. I think there's plenty here. Like, for example, I'm not psychic, and yet we're consistently making predictions, not just about what the event's going to be, but rather if it's fake, it's going to look like this. So it's not about predicting the specific thing, but if it's fake, it's going to have these hallmarks. And these things are consistent. We used to make jokes about it, like the number 33 thing, the water bottles, the lanyards, the drills concurrent with the events. So it's beyond just the entrainment of media entertainment, like PSYOP and the entertainment stuff, where we're consistently pointing out how the movies reflect what's about to happen in a very eerie way. But there's also concurrent drills. That's a giveaway that this is fundamentally a government operation. It's not like the directors are psychic or inspired by the vibes of the universe. I've heard it all. The simulation, or they have to tell us what they're going to do. Revelation of the method. That's all mystification. And I like to demystify, because that's how they keep you in the dark. It's the fog of Psywar. When people start saying, I don't know how this stuff came out in advance. They must have a quantum AI that time traveled and retrocausality made the book. No, take out your Occam's razor and dismiss with the most elaborate, clickbaity, truth-retaining thing and go for the mundane. And if you can't get rid of the mundane, the status quo, if you can't flip the official explanation, then you have no business replacing it. This is the fundamental error of the chemtrail believer. You have no business inserting that theory unless you can explain away condensation trail theory. Just look at it as a theory. Let's just forget it's a fact. Condensation trail theory. The theory is that hot jet exhaust that's moist in the stratosphere where the air is frozen is going to crystallize into little bits of ice. And from down below, it'll look like a cloud, but it'll persist depending on the humidity. So that's the condensation trail theory. And if you think about the volume of the trail, it's explained by, well, you couldn't have that much of a substance in the plane, but for the duration of its flight, it's going to leave a long tube of hot air. So now contrast that with, I think they're spraying something. Yeah, but these things are going to exist whether or not there's a spray. So in other words, there's this, they cannot both exist in the same universe. It's either or. You must choose. And again, the status quo, just because the people accept it doesn't mean it's the truth, but it's usually there for a reason. And if it's a flimsy reason, it should be easy to flip it. But I noticed that instead of confronting it and trying to contradict it, they tend to ignore it, which becomes an appeal to ignorance, which is built into the question, what are they spraying? Anyway, just pointing it out again, we're talking about the thought process that goes into analyzing claims and why we shouldn't be anti-science, because science isn't the problem. The issue here is that it's malappropriated by propagandists who fuse it with science fiction, and the public doesn't know the difference. By the way, I put up a new video responding to the person's tweet. I didn't link him because it's not really about the person. He's just an exemplar of this outlook of I wasn't there, so I don't know. Also, if you go to ips.monster, I have IPS hats for sale. And I'm going to add some. Right now it's the corduroy, the vintage, but I'm probably going to add one of those snapbacks and maybe a trucker hat in the coming days. We'll see. I'll just gauge interest. All right, we'll see you then.